On this episode, we're going to talk about where the hell podcast advertising is headed.
With so many different platforms,
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube,
and their purposes evolving daily, navigating social media can be, well, complicated. Welcome to the Social Media Sucks podcast from Cupco,
Social media.
where we unpack the latest trends and help remove the suck from social media.
Welcome back to the Social Media Sucks podcast, you guys. You're tuning in for Dose of Marketing and to get what's happening in the ever-changing social media landscape. And today with me, we have our beloved CEO, Chris Carbonas.
Hey guys.
And on my right-hand side, Andy Demian, our lead strategist.
Hey guys.
Welcome. So,
Thank you.
today, let's discuss the development of podcast advertising on streaming platforms.
Yes.
So, what's the strength of podcast advertising, you guys?
I think in general, maybe we need to take a step back and maybe just get started on like where is it coming from. And I think it's coming from the fact that podcasts are still a very underutilized market for advertisers, I think. And podcasts have shown tremendous growth in the past 3 or 2 years, I would say, probably 3 years.
Yeah, ever since also Spotify started getting in the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
It's a huge market, and I think as advertisers are looking for new advertising channels, they start to realize podcast advertising is a valid option.
Yeah.
And I think until now there were some podcasts who were heavy into advertising already, but really like the ways of how to advertise in podcasts were just not really optimized for actual advertising. It was always like just like a bit of
Sponsorships.
Yeah,
mostly, right?
sponsorships.
Yeah, it was mostly
Mostly-
on-air read sort of scripts.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
hey, like,
Yeah.
would you like to
Yeah.
improve your life? Get Squarespace.
Yeah.
I think so. Or like all sorts of stuff. And
Yeah.
then I think what's interesting now is that people are actually listening to more and more podcasts that are not just podcasts but also video podcasts. So that also offers like a new placement for ads to be added, the visual one. And now, as far as I know, Spotify is also trying to roll out more and more features that allow better ad distribution while the podcasts are on. So I think that's going to be super interesting. And the strength of podcast advertising is that people are actually actively listening to what they're listening or what they're trying to consume. And I think it's just going to be very interesting to see how it happens, because typically when you listen to something, you don't have that sort of like same type of like attention competition, for
No.
example, where
Right.
that you would normally have in a TV ad or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think many of the, for example, radio brands and things like that would make the migration or the move to podcast advertising, and I think they should make the move.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tough thing about podcast advertising is that we've had dynamic ad placement for a while. Not a lot of brands have taken it on. Like most have done on-air sponsorships where the host reads sort of an ad for somebody. And mostly it's been like bigger brands that want sort of exposure.
Yeah.
And then there's trackability through sort of, go to so-and-so website / the host name
Yeah.
for your 10% off, your 50%
Or use this
off,
code or something.
yeah,
like
exactly.
that,
So
right?
there's been trackability through that, and it hasn't always been, that great, and it sort of hasn't worked that well. It's only worked for like major sort of international brands, whereas, there's so many podcasts now that there is something for almost everybody. You can, if you're a small B2B brand, you actually could find your audience somewhere there. But the trouble then is the sort of placement of that ad, like doing it at scale, like you have to have individual relationships with those podcast hosts. It just it's not a very good solution for ad buying.
Yeah, and it's not automated.
No, it's not automated, and it's not that trackable, and it's sort of, it's kind of ugly to do.
Yeah.
Whereas the other option is, which we're seeing with Spotify, is kind of trying to solve this with their new sort of call to action cards,
CTA action
where,
cards.
in the app before the podcast plays or during the podcast,
Or after.
they have some sort of banner ad that you can
Yeah.
click, and then you've got some trackability, and then you have some sort of way of placing the ad, which is very interesting. There's also some other apps out there, different podcast apps where you can actually place banner ads today. So it's already out there in the world, but obviously Spotify being the number one place in the world to watch or to listen to podcasts now, they've surpassed Apple. It just makes sense that they would have that. In addition, Spotify really needs an extra line of revenue.
Yeah.
Like that's also why they got into to podcasts in the first place is because now they don't have to pay any licensing fees. They don't have to pay out to record labels. They can get as many podcasts as they want on their platform for free, and people will listen. And now we're adding advertising on that. It's like a win-win for Spotify all the way, right? For brands, though, I think it's really complex still. I think the Spotify CTA cards could open it up and give brands a lot more opportunities in that market.
An extra placement at least for the ads.
Yeah.
But with advertising, how can trust and engagement in these podcasts still be remained while growing their advertising?
Well, I think you really have to match the podcast with your product.
Yeah.
Meaning like that's how trust is sort of built. And I think you should maybe even go, if you're really smart, then you're actually reaching out. And I know this is not scalable, but you're reaching out to that podcast host saying, hey, can you try our product? Can you, can you at least as an influencer type of person, like, can you like use it? Because that's how you're going to build trust is that
it's almost the influencer marketing approach.
It's
at
almost
the beginning,
right.
I would say that it is
yeah.
an influencer marketing approach.
Yeah, that because it is essentially influencers doing this. But I think that also takes you back to then it's not scalable because you're literally individually contacting these podcast hosts and saying, hey, can you try our product? And then also we're going to run some ads on your platform or on your podcast as well, right? So, and I think that, like anything, like all advertising, you have to build trust in the ad. You have to like have those markers of okay, it's a brand name, there's a logo, there's a good call to action, there's
creating
it looks
the
like
synergy.
quality, it's good creative work.
Yeah.
So all that has to come into a play when you're building trust. Right, good landing page that matches what you're actually pushing and selling. That's a lot. That's even a big problem in normal banner ads.
Yeah,
like you click on a banner and it's like, wait a second,
different world.
Where did I go to?
Yeah,
like and that also throws you off, right? So all the things that apply with normal digital ad placements apply on podcast marketing as well.
Well, essentially it is just I'm doing quotation. It's just another expanded placement for ads. So, of course, you should think about your
but
your
it's
audience.
massively untapped. Like it's such a big open area that almost like so no brands have done, right? It's
and
really,
it might be cheaper to advertise there in the beginning.
It's not so bad. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
What are like what is the CPC?
That's a good question.
We should look into it.
I have
Stay tuned for the next podcast.
I have some, but I don't remember off the top of my head, like because I have looked into this market, right?
Yeah.
But it's not any different than a search ad or a Facebook click.
Yeah. So it's
like it's
very
very
normal.
comparable, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very comparable.
Thank you guys for sharing your insight on whether podcast advertising is untapped area actually, and a lot of potential can be seen there. And we also see that your advice is definitely to create a synergy between your product and the brand and the podcast, obviously. And we see it as an extra placement for advertisers. So therefore, all the different rules also apply for best practice when you actually advertise on other different platforms and placements. So thank you guys for sharing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And so you have it. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, comments, likes, and dislikes with us, and stay tuned for the next one.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been the Social Media Sucks Podcast.